Positively Muskegon, it's Andy O'Reilly today at the Folker Community Hub, and we're continuing to spotlight our local candidates for the run for the office, depending if it's a city council or all the way up to sheriff, like David Tague is running here. Retired from the Muskegon County Sheriff's Office, what, 5 years ago?
Yes.
Talk up. I didn't give you the speech.
Yes, sir. 5 years ago.
You don't have to yell, but it's not the greatest mic in the world. We're on a budget here.
All right.
So, I mean, you spent 30 years here on the force in Muskegon County. Did some time with corrections before that. You're certainly qualified. What makes you the guy?
My name's David Tague, and I worked for the Sheriff's Department for 30 years. I also received a bachelor's degree from Grand Valley State University. I attended the police academy there and successfully graduated in 1982. My professional memberships are Fraternal Order Police, Deputy Sheriff's Association, Western Michigan Law Enforcement, International Association of Chief of Police Associate Member, VFW, Dad's Auxiliary, NRA member since 1973. I was a certified weapons instructor with NRA. I'm a Twin Lake Gun Club member.
I got to join there. Our cottage is right up by the place, and I hear them shooting all the time. It's like, I got to go over there. I got to get a membership.
It's an excellent club, and it's one of the few places where you can still shoot rifle.
Sure.
I'm also a past member of the Seaway Trap and Ski Club.
Okay. Good stuff. Some qualifications going on there. Talk about your time as a deputy here in Muskegon. How was it for you?
Well, the first half of my career, 15 years, I worked at the jail. And I want to tell you, Andy, none of my opponents have any jail experience.
Okay.
And the primary function of the Sheriff's Department is to run and operate the jail.
Okay.
The sheriff admitted that he only did 6 hours on third shift one night. And so 6 hours doesn't quite get it. Anyways, they all have road patrol experience, which is nice, but nobody has jail experience.
Right.
Nobody also has court experience. I did the second half of my career in courts.
Okay.
I served as district court bailiff, circuit court security, and occasionally family court bailiff for various judges. I did that for 15 years.
Wow. Pretty, I mean, so, you know, the road patrol and all that stuff, I mean, was it tough to be a bailiff? I mean, because people see a bailiff and they kind of think, boy, he's got an easy job. It's a difficult job, though.
Yes. First of all, you can't take a potty break.
No.
you got to be there all the time, and you got to be alert. And for district court, you had to transport your own prisoners there.
Yep.
And circuit court, just transport prisoners there. Family court, occasionally transport prisoners to and from court.
Sure.
I believe the time in the jail did me well because it taught you security. I personally think the most well-rounded officers are the guys that worked the jail first and then went to the road, because it teaches you security. A lot of guys that are police officers don't really understand security, like they'll leave the handcuffs on loose, and they'll learn quick because the learning curve is quite unforgiving. Yeah. If you don't handcuff somebody fairly tight and they get out, you got a fight on your hands, because a lot of guys don't want to go to jail. So the jail has greatly benefited me. Yeah.
So that's a good thing you bring to the table. In your experience, you know, you've seen a lot and you've done a lot. Talk about what qualifies you the best to be the sheriff in Muskegon.
Well, first of all, I believe that the current sheriff is mismanaging everything.
You do?
Yes. Okay. For instance, he's trying now to take credit for solving the Rebecca Bleish murder, when in fact we had a serial killer running on the loose. This case was 2 years old. They did nothing. They never reinvestigated it. Several of my opponents were in charge at the time, allegedly in charge. They made no further investigations. 2 years. The only reason we found this serial killer running loose was because he tried to kill somebody else, and they caught him. Scary. And in particular, I'd like to thank Matt Schultz, who's one of the lead detectives, whose tenacity helped find this guy. And then also, the abuse of overtime. We've had command officers, current and present, current and past, who authorize overtime. Sometimes command officers already working 2 or 3 at a time, and they authorize themselves overtime to pad their retirement. Okay. And I think that was a gross travesty. And the sheriff allowed it until 2010. Ron Malone, who was a probation supervisor for the Muskegon County Probation Department, was authorizing overtime. He was allowed to retire. His minion, Brandon Cantola, was working sobriety court. He got charged with false pretenses. This is a fairly common problem where people are just abusing the system. Nobody's doing anything about it. Another thing is sick time used. Frequently, the deputies feel entitled to the sick time, and although they did earn it because they spent all that time, it is a crushing blow on the county to have to pay the person for being off and then pay overtime for his replacement. In addition to that, I had 2,500 sick hours when I retired. Everybody was shocked when I didn't call in a single day when I retired. One time, a lieutenant called in sick for the whole summer and built the house. They knew about it. They did nothing. And if the sheriff likes you, you get an extra long vacation. If he doesn't like you, you get rode up. I also want you to know there's some more mismanagement of funds. Dennis Smith was that Ottawa County Sheriff deputy that got busted in Muskegon. Do you remember that?
Vaguely.
Well, anyways, a sergeant let him loose because he's worried about his safety in the jail. Now, the sheriff fired him. There was no progressive discipline. As a past union steward, I know there are steps that you have to follow. You can't just fire somebody right off the bat. He got a month vacation, was hired back with full pay, no other punishment.
No kidding.
And so I feel
I
that was a waste of money.
I giggle a little bit because, you know, my background in radio, there was no steps. You were either in or out. There was no, they come in one day, you'd be number one, the next day they come in and fire your butt, just like that.
Well, that's true in many
Yeah,
cases.
yeah.
But we do have a union, and you need to follow the rules.
Sure.
Further mismanagement was the current sheriff hired a civilian accountant friend of his and made her a road sergeant in charge of the jail and the road. This allowed her to retire early. But he not only violated the contract, but it was unethical that he hired a civilian, not a deputy, but a civilian in charge of the road and jail. She enhanced her retirement, was allowed to retire early. Also, you know, if you follow the internet, he's on there more for misdeeds than good deeds. Just check out YouTube sometime and just Google the name. You'll find out plenty of stuff. Wood TV 8 specifically has many articles about him.
Well, you know, and it's okay to point out some of the, you know, the competition and thing like that, but as we were, you know, kind of talking, this is a little bit more about what qualifies you. What sets you apart from all this stuff that you've mentioned to step in here and become the next sheriff, if elected?
Well, I have a degree and I have a lot of experience.
Sure.
And part of my motto is I know a lot because I've done a lot. On David Tague on Facebook, I have numerous articles explaining everything that the sheriff does and is entitled to.
It's a big job.
It is. And once again, money is being wasted.
So you want to put a stop to that?
Yes. And I want to give you another example of wasted money.
Okay.
The guy that got fired, the sergeant, he came back and wrote a grievance. Now, a lot of the command officers in the jail don't have any road experience. A lot of guys in the command for the road have no jail experience. He came back, and now he's sending all the road command to jail corrections school. It's going to cost a lot of money, plus to fill those spots. Now, logically speaking, the other side of that coin is, are we now going to send all the corrections officers to road school? And it's not really going to help because they still have no experience in these areas. And so we're going to have to pay overtime, plus we're not going to have experienced command officers. My personal belief was you should have split the divisions and then got rid of all this baloney.
So that's something you do?
Yes, that is something I would do.
Okay.
And I wouldn't send everybody to school because we just don't have the money. We're going to be in a $5.5 million deficit this year.
Wow.
1.8 of that is just the jail payment alone. The last 2 years, we've only been paying the interest on the jail money, and it's supposed to be a balloon loan. It's going to keep getting bigger. And so we need to start spending our money better and not be sending yourself to school constantly like that.
What's your answer for that? How do we, I mean, because, you know, the money coming in is what it is. How do you square things up to get that taken care of?
Well, most of the county departments are already working short.
Okay.
My wife works for district court, and she's been working 4 and 5 people short for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And so they want to cut them even more, and that's just not going to work.
Right.
They're already jammed up. They get overtime just to catch up, and it's not going to work. I don't know what they're going to do. And the sheriff said he was going to cut staff in the jail. You got to understand that the jail doubled in size, and they still have the same number of staff.
Yeah.
And some of the problem with saying, oh, I can operate with less is We have a keyless jail. All these remotes are being worked by buttons. A person has to be in that office pushing those buttons. Otherwise, it will not work.
Yep.
And so he cannot leave that. There's dedicated positions where they cannot leave because they have to work the buttons. If you have a group fight of 4 or 5 inmates, you're going to have a major problem because they can't handle it. And he's talking about cutting them further. It's just not going to work.
Okay.
And now I hate to say this, but I've already heard some commissioners saying they might have to raise property taxes to make up for all the losses we've had in revenue sharing. But I'll tell you what, I will make sure the money gets budgeted right. In fact is, I will go to the county board and ask for a $10,000 pay cut to help the county get back in the black.
Okay.
We are in debt up to our eyebrows, and I am willing to do something for that point.
Cool.
I am willing to sacrifice personally to lead an example. I lead by example.
That's what you mentioned. Talk a little bit about the next 10 years of the Sheriff's Department here in Muskegon. What would you, if elected, what would you see over the next 10 years?
Well, I have some things to fix. For instance, the jail stuff. I want to explain what vicarious liability is.
Okay.
Vicarious liability is when your subordinate does something and you're responsible. Oftentimes you'll see the sheriff being sued along with 5 or 6 command officers. Mm-hmm. And this is because they're not following policy or they somehow violated the law. Government has limited immunity. If you're doing the right thing, they can't sue you. That's why having private jails will never work, because they can sue them to the max.
Yep.
They have no immunity whatsoever. But if you abuse this, for instance, in 2012, Deontay McKinley was gassed, put in restraint chair. His family got $1.55 million. There was a suicide of an inmate who was mentally ill, and the command officer blatantly put him in a security cell, and when he was told by mental health that he has to be under observation. He was put in a security cell, not under observation. He hung himself. They got a $60,000 settlement. Another man had a ruptured spleen from a fight before he got arrested, and everything in jail was taped. And they have command officers, jail command officers, taunting this man, calling him a sissy, saying, "Why are you crying?" He was begging for his life. And they settled out of court. It cost us a lot of money. And I want you to know that past administrators thought that we could make the jail payment just by not being sued. Action needs to be taken.
Yeah.
And at some of those points, we were self-insured, so the county ate the whole amount of money. We have insurance now, but sometimes we didn't. So all I can say is, shame on you, shame on you.
Fair enough. Got just a minute or two left here. Say you come to my door. I imagine, as any candidate, you've been out doing some door-to-door stuff.
Yes, I have.
Give me the speech. What are you going to tell me as I meet you at the door?
Well, when I meet you at the door, I hand you my little card here.
Yep, right there.
It's got some of my credentials, because I have credentials too lengthy to mention.
Sure.
And I give them that, and I just ask them to please read it.
Yep.
If they're interested in what's going on with the Sheriff's Department, I will elaborate at length on any subject.
Okay. So you've got your candidate on. Anything you want to leave us with before the primary here coming up August 2nd?
Yes. If you have too many volunteer hobbies, or if you're gone all the time, you can't do the job.
Yeah.
If you're always volunteering for stuff, you can be socially active, but everyone knows there's only so much time in the day to do anything. Your personal work, for instance, I'm campaigning now. Some of my personal stuff's going by the wayside. I feel that a lot of my competition have too much on their plate, and they're going to continue to do a haphazard job because they're not going to be active in the community.
Okay.
They're not going to be active at the Sheriff's Department.
Okay. So what's your piece? That's it?
That's it, sir.
Well, I wish you the best, man. I mean, kind of a different spin on what we've done here so far, but you got your points across, and I wish you the best in the primary there coming up August 2nd.
Well, thank you.
It's like any other candidate. He comes in to say his piece, and we're glad you did. It's important to get to know the people running for office, and your experience and everything else out there makes you a viable candidate to me. David Tague, Make sure you get out and vote. It is August 2nd. I think you are our last sheriff candidate, so you
Yes.
we saved you till the end, man. Here you
Yep,
are,
thank
wrapping
you,
it
sir.
up. Absolutely. Make sure you vote August 2nd. That primary is coming up. David Tague would appreciate your vote. Thanks for tuning in.